some big games. We'll come to the North London derby shortly. First of all, though, Wolves against Newcastle United. And what a game it turned out to be in the end. It looks as if it could go Wolves' way, but it wasn't. It's Newcastle United. They needed that too. Delighted to say Dan Hughes from the Wolves Fancast is joining us right now, as is Steve Wraith as well with NUFC Matters. Gentlemen, both of you today, if I could start with you, Dan. Ouch in the end.
Yeah, tough to take. Thought we might have been able to get over the line, but after sort of the 60th, 65th minute, we just seemed to tire as a unit. You can't account for the goals that Newcastle scored, two goals at our keeper. Just you can't do anything about it. You know, Prime, Schmeichel, Buffon, whoever you want to put in the goal, just gets nowhere near those efforts, and it's tough to take really. 1 point out of 4 now. We've played against 3 teams. For me, that will be in the top 6 come the end of the season. I'm not disappointed with the performance. It just feels like we can't buy a win at the moment.
Yeah, I completely agree with you, but you know it is still very early season, and you've played some top sides. I'll come back and ask you more about where you need or what you need to see a little bit more of. But Steve, for you, this is the sort of backbone away from home that Newcastle United need to see again, the fans, don't they?
Yeah, I mean, it's another strange, meeting with you and I on screen, Mark, because Newcastle haven't played well in big parts of that game, yet managed to get 3 points. We felt that the first half, we were actually dominating in spells, but we just didn't have anything up front to show for it. And then we got caught with a sucker punch, and Wolves went 1 up, deservedly so. And from that moment on, Wolves took the game by the scruff of the neck, like a home team should. And ultimately, I felt Newcastle were, second best at the start of the second half. The substitutions didn't seem to work at first, but the difference this season between this season and last season is we've got strength on the bench. We've got a good squad, and to be able to bring the likes of Tonali, Willock and Barnes on really did change, and it really did change the game. But it took a while for them to find their feet. Lewis Hall was outstanding for Newcastle today, our left back. He struggled to find his feet at times in the team, but today he put a wonderful, wonderful performance in. And ultimately, it looks like it's cost him, because from where we were standing at the game today, he ended up playing up front because he was injured, and we'd made all of our substitutions. But I agree with me Wolves counterpart there. Those 2 goals, nobody's stopping them. A wicked deflection for Fabian Schär, but the winner by Harvey Barnes was superb. And, ultimately, the points are in the bag, and Newcastle haven't played well again for big parts of the game. So we're sitting in the league table, sitting pretty, but I think we're all still scratching our heads, wondering how.
Well, now and again, you have to have at some stage in the season those sort of results going your way to achieve what you would like to. And you're very much in this early stop-start stage of the season, up there already, which is a good base once more for where you need to be and what your ambitions are.
Yeah, I mean, it's nice to hear other football fans saying, Newcastle could potentially be top 6. That's where we need to be. We've had that, summer of discontent that we discussed last week and the week before, which ultimately has been, a hangover that's hanging over us. The last press conference Eddie had to put up with, he was asked again about off the field disappointment. Hopefully that's now behind us and we can concentrate on football. It's clear that there's a hangover hanging over not only the club but over the team, and we just need to get over that. But once we start playing well, watch out. Premier League, I guess that's what we should be seeing. We're still a bit concerned about up front, though, Mark. We've got Alexander Isak's not really getting the service. Went off today, not sure what was the matter with him. Whether that was tactical or whether there's an issue. And Callum Wilson now is still, a couple of weeks away, we're told, from fitness. So, is Eddie Howe going to have to go down that kind of Pep Guardiola Man City route where he plays the season without a centre forward again? But it's interesting. It's interesting being a Newcastle fan at the minute. We're not playing well. We're getting points in the bag, and that's not a bad trade to get into.
I want to speak to you both about this, and Dan, I'll come to you first. I don't like anymore, and there's no need for it with the amount of football that we have, that this international break at such an early start of the season, it is absolute nonsense as far as I'm concerned, particularly on the years where we have major competitions. If these international managers can't get sorted the best players in the world without having to play game after game after game, I'm afraid it doesn't work for me anymore. You know, the start of the Premier League, the start of the Football League and the lower divisions, it matters for the sides to get some sort of continuity in the early stages. And I don't know about you, Dan, but, you know, I don't want to watch 6 games for England that they're supposed to win against non-entities.
Yeah, I'm with you. Same with you, Mark. I've become massively frustrated with international football for a good few years now. Even, you know, I'm sorry to people who enjoy international football. I'm really ignorant. I don't even know the full-time score from the England-Finland game because I've got little to no interest in international football now. You know, the people who sort of run football, it's money now before the enjoyment of the game. Like, they'll have footballers playing 7 days a week if they could, and for me, I've just lost all interest in international football. For me, if they could just draw a line in the sand and, you know, commit people to, you're an international player, you're a club domestic player, I'd watch domestic football every day of the week before I gave international football any of my attention. I spend too much money following Wolves home and away about having to give my attention to England football side. For me, that footballers just aren't relatable to the working class man anymore.
No, I could completely understand where you're coming from. Steve, for you as well, you know, the problem for Newcastle, like other sides, you have one of your stars doesn't really get a look in at all in the summer, but they've wasted their time with him, you know, and what have you. I do think that the two have got to work a lot better. But the trouble is, you've got this Infantino who just jets around the world with the Middle East basically telling him where to go, or the Americans, rather than us being telling him where to go, which is nowhere for some time.
Yeah. I agree. I mean, I'm not a fan of international football, and I don't watch the England games. The this Nations League seems to be just another money-making scheme. And yeah, there's some people who like to go home and away with England as well as follow their club, but it's not for me. It never has been, and I haven't been excited about England genuinely since 1990. You know, Gascoigne, Waddle, and Beardsley, and you know that particular era. Terry Venables' team, Euro 96 was exciting as well. I don't know whether it's just, I just don't know whether it's just become, just too much for football fans to do that. It's just, but it's the break in the season, and we've got one in September now. We've got one in October and one in November, and it's no good. It's no good for your team. Your team, if it's on a good run, suddenly ends up, having that put to an end because they've got 2 weeks off. It's not great at all.
Do you think also teams in the Premier League and even lower down the leagues as well, and we're talking to them all tonight, from both of your point of view, Dan, I'll come to you and then to you, Steve. I watched a couple of videos recently of Chris Waddle, to remember him again. I saw him when he was down in Marseille, obviously, and everything like that, and the player that he was in Gascoigne, as you've mentioned. I think of John Richards amongst many others at Wolves as well. Well, seemingly for me, Pep Guardiola has now changed football into, we have to play it out from the back, we have to get to the halfway line, we then have to turn around and play it back again before we get to the end and score a goal within the 6 yards. I just don't see enough players now taking on the opposition or having a go from 25 yards or anything like that. That game seems to be going out of fashion, and I think it's exactly the time that we need it to come back in.
Yeah, I can't really disagree with that. As good as Pep's been and as successful he is, unless you can get, up-and-coming coaches to sort of contradict that style of play, I don't know where we go from with our game now. Like you mentioned, like sort of the players like Waddle, Gascoigne, Best, they wouldn't fit in today's game because a lot of coaches want athletes now before actual pure footballers. It's sad to see. I mean, you don't see many goals scored from outside the box nowadays because of Pep's play. I mean, apart from today when Barnes scores an absolute worldie, Steve. You don't see goals from outside the box very often now because, it's all tiki-taka, build your way up, get the ball to the byline and 6-yard box pass across for a tap-in. It's it has become really rigid, football has. But unless you've got up and coming coaches learning a new style of play, Pep's got a lot to answer for.
Yeah, no, look, what do you think about that, Steve? I mean, you know, Chris, of course, and Gazza, as we mentioned, and others. There were different ways of playing. Of course there were. It was different times as well. But exciting times nonetheless.
It was, yeah. I mean, I've got to be perfectly honest. I miss the Vinnie Jones style of challenging as well, and Steve McMahon in the middle kicking people up a height, and you know, David Batty. That particular part of football I miss. It was taking, you know, non-contact sport. It's almost become, but from an attacking perspective, yeah. I mean, you know. 4-4-2 was superb. 2 wingers, 2 centre forwards. We've often said with Newcastle recently that, you know, Alexander Isak is isolated up front, and sometimes players just don't suit that style. They're better off having a big man, little man up front, like a Toshak and Keegan, or a Supermark and Tudor. That's what you need. You need to go back to those kind of ways, and it just takes a brave manager to come in and do it, to change the philosophy. Pep's done that at Manchester City, and he's changed the game forever in this country. Kevin Keegan did it in the 90s with the Entertainers. Arsene Wenger did it. Fergie did it. You know, we don't have characters as managers as much anymore now either. You know, we're already looking as we're coming out the ground, going, who's going to be first for the chop? Is it Sean Dyche? Is it Gary O'Neill? You know, if Wolves carry on in the same vein, you know, football's almost become predictable.
Yeah,
that way. You know, in so many different ways.
Well, let's hope that next time both of you come on the show, and it's great to have you tonight, and safe journeys home wherever you guys are going. And hopefully next time it'll be a Wolves game as well, that Dan, you can hang on to everything. Great to speak to Dan Hughes and to Steve Wraith as always. Wolves against Newcastle United. Little matter of the North London derby. Arsenal winning it, of course, again today.